Hello, every pony. JTH.
Tailsthehero.
And as you know, we finished Princess Molestia up earlier today. Thank God we finally got that done.
12 parts, for God's sake.
I know, seriously. But we're going to be reacting to another pony fanfiction starting this evening. It's called, say it with me, 1, 2, 3, Swayback Mountain.
From what we see, it's an Applejack and Rarity shipping thing, and I actually really enjoy that couple. I think it's adorable.
Yeah, but like we know from the show, those two have practically nothing in common.
But opposites do attract.
Exactly. But anyways, as with Princess Molestia, this is Ace Ka's reading of it. Thank you so much, Ace Ka. You rock for posting all these fanfiction readings.
Because we're just too damn lazy to read them ourselves!
But anyways, here we go. Part 1. Here is our reaction to Swayback Mountain. And as far as we can tell, there's only 2 parts of this, so we'll be able to do this a lot shorter than Princess Molestia.
They are long, though. 20 minutes, at least 25 minutes a piece.
Yes, but here we go with part 1 of our reaction to Swayback Mountain.
Do it.
My nose is a little clogged up, and I have a bit of a dry throat, so I have
a dry throat.
bottle of water here with me in case I need to drink. I don't know, some weird sickness going around. It's like some is like season 2, something like that. It's like season 2 something. I don't remember, but like apparently a whole bunch of people got it this morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I just I don't know. It's weird. I'm one of those guys. So you know, I mean.
At least you're not letting that stop you.
Whatever. Today, for the next few, 10, a while videos, whatever, I'm going to be reading Swayback Mountain, which was requested to me by, I think it was Silent Kill 217, and I don't think that it's going to be so raunchy as the other ones.
Whatever the hell that means.
And it's pretty much just shipping,
like
so...
Oh.
Here we
Okay.
go. Are you really sure you need all that stuff, Rarity? Applejack looked over the bulging saddlebags that the unicorn pony was carrying with difficulty up the sloping mountain path.
Of course.
We ain't going to one of those fashion shows, you know. Of course I know that, darling. Rarity was short of breath, and she kept shifting the saddlebags so that they would sit more balanced on her back. But, when you said that you were planning to go to the Swayback Mountains, I just had to
Knock my
come with
glasses off my face.
you. See, frowned Applejack, I just don't get why you need to travel so far to collect berries.
No,
There's
not
a whole
really. There's
forest
nothing
of
to
berries
say.
right next to Ponyville. But, the saddlebags, which had been threatening to pull Rarity over, were finally sitting correctly. But, darling, I already explained. I don't need just any old common berries. I need special berries that only grow in the Swayback Mountains. They're the only berries in all of Equestria whose
Kind of how the
juice
movie
is a
The
perfect
Brokeback
azure.
Mountain started out.
And I just need that color dye from my latest
I
range
don't
of
remember the whole thing.
accessories. Not that a pony is. She looked at Applejack up and down critically. Close to earth as you are, my dear, would understand that. I understand plenty, little miss. Everything has to be perfect.
Ouch.
Applejack shook her head.
Of
I
course.
should have never told you that I was going to complete in the rodeo in Cold Springs, and that them Swayback Mountains was right on my way. Rarity sniffled. Well, seeing as how we're already climbing these beastly mountains, I suggest that we make a best of the bad situation. She broke into a trot and passed Applejack, who snorted in frustration. The indigo-maned unicorn pony was as much trouble as a barrel of Paris Brides. Applejack was about to catch up with
Trust me,
her
no,
when she
she's
heard
not.
a low rumble from behind them. She turned and saw a rank of black clouds being pushed into position by a squad of
boy.
Pegasus ponies.
Oh, God is right.
She groaned and hit her head with her hoof. Now, how in tarnation did I forget that there was a thunderstorm planned for tonight? She broke into a trot, then a gallop, and as she sped past Rarity, who was already puffing from the thinner air of the mountains, she cried, "You better put your running shoes on, little missy. There's a storm a-brewing, and it's coming right for us." Rarity looked back and cried out, "Eep!" She broke into a gallop as well, and was soon next to Applejack. I just would have happened to have forgotten my raincoat, she
Oh
cried.
my God.
And now, with all this galloping, I'm getting absolutely coated in dust and perspiration. You sure are sweating like a prize pig, Applejack laughed. Rarity said nothing, and merely turned her nose up in disgust at the vulgar comparison. To the south, in the skies over Ponyville, Rainbow Dash groaned in frustration. Pegasus ponies were all pushing the dark clouds in the completely wrong direction, and things
Uh-oh.
were getting out of hand. Clouds crashed against clouds, lightning flashed, thunder roared, and rain started soaking exactly the wrong parts of the countryside. That ditsy-do, Dash muttered.
Derpy!
Last time I let her organize a downpour.
Wish I could dirt my eyes. That'd
She
be so
jetted
awesome.
off to the area where Ditsy-do and several of the less experienced ponies were matching together the smaller storm clouds, piling them into a gigantic thunderhead. But Dash was too late to prevent disaster. Flash
By the way,
a sudden
Derpy's
eye-shattering
awesome.
streak of errant lightning. and
She
the
was
thunder
actually
that followed
in
rolled over the
today's
landscape
episode,
like a
which was
shotgun.
awesome.
I know! She talked!
Rain
Quick words.
I
softly at first, and beeps
Rock on. Please, Lauren Foster, if you're watching this, make a Derpy episode.
Applejack knew that it was going to
I'd be happy.
Please.
It's one of those
I'd
things
be
that ponies
happy.
think they're doing, Applejack thought to herself, shaking her head in disbelief. There does big old show-offs. Speaking of show-offs, she turned back to where Rarity was struggling to keep up with her. The unicorn pony's saddlebags were slowing her down, and her mane was wet with
Then
sweat
take
as
the
well
son
as
of a bitch
rain.
off.
Come on, princess, said
It's
Applejack.
a $35
At this
watch. I
rate, we
just
ain't
threw
gonna reach
behind
the
my
river
back.
before nightfall. And I sure as apples don't want to camp where there's liable to be a landslide. Just, Rarity panted, redoubling her efforts. Let me catch
Still
my
works,
breath
doesn't
a moment. Applejack groaned, but she stopped to let Rarity catch up. As soon as we're over the rise, it'll be downhill. Rarity nodded, throwing a foreleg over Applejack's shoulders and leaning against the earth pony as she gasped for air. It may be that I did pack a few too many items.
What do you need to
Applejack
take
looked
with
at the
you on
bulging
a small
saddlebags.
hike?
Just
I
what
don't know.
did you pack? We're only going to be there for 3 days, tops.
Oh, well.
Well, said Rarity, her
Oh,
face no longer
I guess we're gonna
expressive
find
before.
out.
There's 3 days worth of outfits, of course, and each outfit naturally needs a small selection of accessories to go with it. So I'm ready
Of
for any kind of
course.
situation. And then there's my makeup box, and since I have no idea what kind of lighting to expect in Cold Springs, I simply had to bring all of my foundations, so as not to be caught out. You see, Applejack, Rarity raised her nose in the air, and her face grew haughty. Not every pony
I love
can be
Rarity,
as
but
reckless
come
and
on.
fly by the seat of your saddle as you are, my dear. I must be ready for every eventuality, or else I shall look ridiculous in front of every pony. And fashion death is quite simply the most dire of fates. She tossed her mane in emphasis.
What do you mean, you know?
Applejack rolled her eyes in irritation. I can think
There's
of
just
a
no
dozen
pleasing you,
worse
is there,
things than
Rarity?
looking at the foal in front of others.
Abso-freaking-lutely not.
Being struck by lightning,
Everything's gotta be
swept
just
away
so.
by a
Everything's
raging
gotta be
torrent,
just
being
so.
foremost from the mind of my moment. She gestured towards the approaching black thunderhead of blue haze and torrential rain beneath it that was sweeping across the landscape towards them. Now let's get going. Not long after they reached the ridgetop, but the path down the mountainside was almost invisible now. The sky was covered in cloud, and twilight spread over them. And twilight sparkled, hee hee. Applejack led the way, gingerly testing every new ledge of rock to make sure it was safe, when Rarity stood close behind her. Don't follow quite so close, warned Applejack, or else we'll both end up on the bottom of this mountain a mite faster than we'd expect. Rarity stopped
Would
abruptly.
suck.
Yeah.
Some scree loosened under her hooves, fell away down the mountainside, and she jumped back with a yelp. The rocks fell for several heartbeats and clattered ominously somewhere far below.
Oh, boy.
What did I tell you? Rarity moaned. I don't think I can go on, she sobbed. I can't see a thing.
Ugh.
Applejack flashed in anger. You gotta go on, Missy, else the rain will catch up with us and these rocks will be slippery as well. Rarity closed her eyes and swallowed. She nodded. Very well. Let's go on, then. Progress was slow, but with Applejack's sharp cajoling and the threatening peals of thunder that came sooner and sooner after the flashes of lightning that gave birth to them, Rarity found the courage to go on. They were almost at the bottom of the mountain. Beneath them, the river that flowed down the mountains and across the plains to Cold Springs became visible, appearing as a sinuous cobalt-gray path with every flash of lightning. Just a small ways left now, Rarity, said Applejack. Then a quick gallop across the bridge, and we'll be on the other side, and we can make camp under one of those rockety outcrops.
Meh.
Rockety. Oh, thanks, Celestia, cried Rarity. I simply cannot wait to be out of these wet and sticky saddlebags.
Oh, yeah.
Let's hurry up.
Oh, yeah,
But in her
right.
haste to move off, her
Or should I
unicorn
say,
pony
oy
came
vey.
down too hard on a rock hidden in front of her by the wet mud. She slipped backwards, landed on her side, and started sliding perceptuously down the path.
Uh-oh.
Rocks and mud came away with her, and Applejack had no time to react as the muddy unicorn pony and part of the mountain side struck her and knocked her off of her feet. Together, spattered in mud and screaming, they careened down the path, dislodging more stones and mud as they went.
Uh-oh.
3 heartbeats later, they reached the bottom, but they didn't stop. Close to the river, the mud was even deeper, and although they were both able to right themselves, they kept sliding, their hooves skating across the bank.
The river.
And then, with a colossal splash, they were in the bitterly cold water of the river.
Oh, that's never fun.
Applejack surfaced first, coughing and sputtering. Rarity! Rarity! She cried out, but her friend was nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, Rarity surfaced near her. She was coughing as well, dazed but uninjured. Come on, little missy, said Applejack,
at least they're
taking
not
hold of
hurt.
Rarity's saddlebags in her mouth and pulling her towards the opposite
Water's
bank.
freezing.
Swim harder! I can't swim! Rarity cried.
Jesus,
I can only pony paddle!
A pony paddle.
Then pony paddle as hard as you can!
That's awesome.
Several
You
desperate
place
minutes
dog
later,
paddle
they
with
were on the
pony
other
paddle.
side of the
Beautiful.
stream.
Yeah.
It was so muddy here. And Applejack pulled Rarity from the
But
water
then again,
onto,
that's
the wet,
funny as hell.
onto the wet sand. The unicorn pony coughed up some more water, but she managed to raise her head and smile at Applejack.
Phew.
Applejack's eyes flashed with anger. Smile at Applejack. Rarity's eyes were moist from tears, river water, and rain. Oh, my darling Applejack, she breathed, getting to her feet with difficulty and pony hugging her Applejack by putting her neck over her friend's and nuzzling her cheek. You saved my life!
Yay.
Applejack's eyes flashed with anger. But then a flush of overwhelming relief washed over her, and she softened. They were safe. She pulled out of the hug and smiled at the grateful unicorn pony. Shucks, Rarity, she replied. 'Twarn't nothing at all. She lowered her eyes in modesty, but she opened them when she heard Rarity shriek. Applejack! Rarity cried. Oh. Well, let me try that again. Applejack! Rarity cried. Your hat!
What?
Oh,
She
no.
lost her hat?
My hat? Applejack lifted a hoof and felt her head all over. Rarity was right. The animator skipped a frame.
What?
My hat! My hat! Damn it. My hat! Can't
Don't worry about it.
Just go.
My hat! Applejack burst into tears, and Rarity looked at her in shock.
Oh.
She'd never seen the Earth Pony so upset. My hat! It's gone! I've gone and lost it! I can't get the accent right.
Must have meaning to her.
Duh.
Oh, my dear!
Well, we don't know
Rarity.
Well, I don't know,
Rarity.
but
Oh, my
I'm
dear
sure we'll
Rarity.
find out.
I'll make you a new one as soon as we get back to Ponyville. Don't you worry about it. You don't understand, cried Applejack. That was my pappy's hat.
Oh.
The last time I saw him alive, he took it off his head and gave it to me.
Oh.
And he said, this is yours
I'm
now,
gonna
my little apple fucker.
I'm gonna
Keep this
cry.
hat safe, but don't forget that your pappy loved you more than anything else in the world.
Oh,
Rarity's eyes
I'm
closed,
cry.
but then they
It's
grew
cute.
steely. She shook the tears
Poor
from her eyes and
Applejack.
jerked her head out of the
I'm
wet
gonna fucking
saddlebag.
cry.
I'll find your hat, darling, she said.
What?
stomping her way
Huh?
towards
Rarity?
downstream along the
Confuzzled.
beach. Wait! Rarity!
Up is more like
Applejack
it.
shouted out to her, but the
Wait.
unicorn pony didn't stop. That silly filly's gonna do something crazy. I just know it. By the time she'd caught up, Rarity had spotted Applejack's hat floating in the river.
Yay.
It was almost invisible, but it was her hat all right.
Oh.
Rarity stopped and stabbed her horn into the air. Purple azure energy sparkled along it, and in the
Get
river the hat was surrounded in
Get
the
it.
same light.
Get it.
But it quickly flickered and faded.
Oh.
Oh, damn
It's
it.
too far away, said Rarity in frustration. Rarity, don't do nothing sit. But the unicorn pony had already leapt into the river. And
Oh,
was headed
no.
for
Oh,
her hat.
damn it.
Oh,
Oh, God.
pony feathers! Why don't you ever listen to me? Applejack galloped up the
She's
beach,
wary.
keeping
What do you
alongside
expect?
her. Rarity was right behind
She never
the
listens
hat
to
now,
anyone.
and purple magic once again
Or any
sprinkled
pony.
life along her horn. This time, the glow remained strong, and with difficulty she lifted the hat out of the water and floated it across to Applejack on the shore. Once the glow flickered, and
What
Rarity
about
almost
what about
dropped it.
her?
Once the glow flickered, and Rarity almost dropped it, but she bit her lip, squeezed her eyes shut, and with a final burst of magic, the hat at last made it to the riverbank.
Yay.
Yeah.
Applejack grabbed
What
it in
about
her mouth
Rarity?
and flung it far from the water, for she could see that Rarity was exhausted and barely able to keep her head above
Oh,
water.
no.
Oh, no.
Then the unicorn pony suddenly stopped swimming and slipped under the surface. Applejack
Uh-oh.
gasped and leapt into the river, and in moments was next to where she'd last seen her friend. She took a deep breath and dived down, searching with her mouth and forehooves for Rarity in the black, swirling water.
Oh dear.
Mm.
An age later, her lungs burned, and she was forced to surface again, but with desperate sucking in of air, she straightaway dived down again, and this time she found her.
Oh.
No saddlebags to grab this time.
She's been
Applejack had
underwater.
Rarity's curly tail in her
God
mouth,
knows
and
how
painfully
long.
she dragged her sopping, unconscious friend from the water.
CPR time.
Oh, Rarity, Applejack muttered, wiping the water from the unicorn pony's face. What have you gone and done to yourself? You crazy little filly! She put her cheek to her friend's mouth. Rarity wasn't breathing.
Oh.
Applejack didn't hesitate, but at once she took a deep breath, put her lips against Rarity's pale blue ones, and breathed out. Breathe, darn you! Breathe! Don't give up on me, Rarity! Breathe! Applejack stepped back, and looked at her friend. She lay there, unmoving in the dark, the rain falling about her.
No.
New tears burst out in Applejack's eyes. No. Oh, Celestia, please, no, she whispered. But then, suddenly, bananas! Thousands of them.
What the
But
hell?
then Rarity groaned. So soft, Applejack thought she must have imagined it.
Bananas? Why bananas? Why couldn't it have been
Brought her
apples
face
or
close to
pears
nuzzle
or...
the unicorn pony's
I
feet.
hate
Rarity groaned
cats.
louder and started to
Up
cough.
the
The
head.
water suddenly dribbled from between her lips. Applejack quickly turned onto her side and held her as wave after wave of river poured out of her mouth.
He was
Oh,
right.
thanks, Celestia, said Applejack, patting Rarity on her back to help dislodge the last of the water.
Thank
she
God
breathed in.
Rarity's okay.
You're breathing
right.
again. You're okay. Applejack's top lip quivered. For a minute there, I thought I'd lost you, she whispered.
Aww.
Oh,
Rarity looked up at Applejack
cute.
groggily. The unicorn pony's beautiful
There's hidden
indigo mane,
feelings there,
wet
you
and
gotta
tangled,
know
was
it.
plastered to her
What?
face and neck.
You gotta know
Her
there's
coat was
hidden,
caked
there's
in
hidden
mud and
feelings
river
in there.
Yeah.
It broke Applejack's heart to see Rarity in such a state. But then the unicorn pony smiled at her. Darling, she whispered, there's no way I'd go anywhere looking like this.
What?
Does it hurt anywhere, Rarity? Applejack asked in concern. Do you need anything? Rarity looked up at her friend and whispered, do you have a mirror? And then Applejack at last allowed herself to burst into a tear. With Rarity too weak to help, it took a long time for Applejack to set up the tent. Most of the pegs were lying on the bottom of the river, so she was forced to collect heavy river rocks and roll them into the edges of the tarpaulin to keep the material in place.
Oh, that sucks.
The wind was growing wilder with every passing moment, tearing at the tent and threatening to blow it into the air. From the dryness of the nook under the outcropping, Rarity watched Applejack struggling in the rain. Applejack had wrapped her up, and all that was left of the outfit she'd brought with her. The rest were flowing downstream somewhere, never to be seen or admired by any pony ever again.
Aw.
The outer layer of
Damn.
Rarity's warm cocoon was the exquisitely sequined party dress she'd bought with her in case there was some kind of social event after the rodeo. She chuckled grimly. If the gentle colts in Cold Springs could see her now, the muddy river had gone into her saddlebags and ruined it. Half the sequins were missing, and it was stained with mud beyond repair. In a few moments, the
Well,
gorgeous
what are
creation
you-
she had
what are
been
you
so
gonna
proud of, gazing on it as
Wait a
it
minute, is
glittered
the
on a
dress
dressmaker's
wet?
doll in her boutique,
Because it's
had
wet,
become
she
a
might
little
get
more than
hypothermia.
a filthy rag. Rarity held back tears. All of those days of hard work, sewing each individual sequin in perfectly straight lines, wasted. How tragic. In
Why
her
do you
weakest
say that
days, Rarity
sarcastically?
felt
That's
absolutely
heartless.
useless. She tried to get up and help Applejack
Well, when
earlier,
you
but it
think
was too
about
much for
what's
her
going
heart to
on
stand.
here, you know,
Watching the Earth Pony
fuck
working
the
so
clothes, at least I'm
stoically,
alive.
so
True.
selflessly, in that cold, dark maelstrom of wind and rain. But the sudden wave of weakness had set her entire body trembling, and she'd slumped back onto the ground. Applejack had galloped up to her, her eyes furious, berating her. You try and move yourself one more time, little missy, and I'll come and roll some rocks on top of you as well.
Ooh.
Rarity had lowered her eyes.
Anger.
I'm so sorry, Applejack. I just feel so
What the hell?
terrible that I can't be of any
I don't know.
assistance to you, darling.
Feeling a bit ransom, Molly.
And all of this is my fault.
I am random.
If only I'd
I'm
been
like
more
Pinky.
careful deciding where to put those big, clumsy hooks of mine. Now, don't you worry yourself about
Pinky
that,
giggle.
Rarity,
Yeah.
Applejack replied. The unicorn pony's distress had touched her. It was just an accident, it's all. Could have happened to any pony. It wouldn't have happened to you, Rarity had replied softly so that Applejack couldn't hear her as
what
she
the hell?
walked back into the rain. You always know the right thing to do. Applejack rolled the final rock into place. There, she said in triumph, even wearing her oilskin coat and hat. She was sopping wet, and she took herself over to a corner of the nook, away from where Rarity was sitting, and shook herself dry. Now let's get out of this wind and get warmed up. Rarity nodded. Even wrapped in her so many layers, the wind was cutting into her, and her bones ached and her teeth chattered with the cold. How unfortunate. The two ponies crawled under the tent flap and into the dry, dark warmth inside. It was still daylight, but the black clouds of the storm blocking out the sun, it was as if it was the middle of the night inside the tent. Applejack flicked on a torch with her mouth and placed it in the corner of the tent. Its pale yellow light made huge shadows of two ponies against one side of the tent, and Rarity's eyes suddenly lit up with delight when she saw them. Even wrapped up in rags, I have such a svelte silhouette, she beamed, striking a pose. And Applejack, oh, just look at you, she pointed at
Aw.
Applejack's silhouette magnified on
Funny.
the wall of the tent.
Yeah.
You know, my dear, your cowboy hat really is so charming. Its wide brim is simply the perfect accessory for your
Flirting,
ponytail.
are we?
It balances it so well.
Yeah.
Applejack lay down,
If you want to
exhausted, and
consider
watched
it
Rarity as
flirting.
she tried different glamorous poses, her silhouette mirroring them. She was tired, and part of her was still angry at the unicorn pony, but she looked down at her own shadow, wearing her pappy's cowboy hat. The memory of Rarity leaping into the river to save it without hesitation made the anger melt away as quickly as it had come. Applejack closed her eyes for a moment and, without realizing it, dozed off. When she opened her eyes again, she saw that Rarity was curled up beside her, fast asleep.
Aww.
The unicorn pony had
That's
earlier
cute.
washed the mud and weeds off herself as best she could with rainwater, but her coat was still smudged with dirt and her mane was all clumped together in places. Applejack smiled at her sleeping face, the heavy eyelashes fluttering slightly as she dreamed. And she licked the unicorn pony's wet cheek. Even after all their adventures today, Rarity looked so beautiful.
Aww.
Applejack sighed and cuddled against her for
The
warmth.
cuteness.
Oh.
Oh, so cute. You're going to have a relationship with your...
Okay, that's freaking funny.
And
That's
in how
what I was thinking.
tarnation can you smell so sweet after sliding down a mountainside and wading through a river of mud? You smell just like you left one of those fancy spas. She chuckled.
You mean spas, you.
Flowers and soap.
This
Sandalwood all
pronunciator.
bundled up
Western.
together.
True.
Unicorn
That's
magic.
still.
Must be. And the rain continued to patter and hiss outside, and the thunder rolled and growled. Applejack fell asleep as well. When Applejack awoke, the light inside the tent was the dull gray of early dawn. Those Pegasus ponies must have finally got their act together, she thought in relief. The first event of the rodeo was scheduled for the early afternoon, and with a bit of luck she and some determined hiking, they'd be able to get to Cold Springs in time. She looked down at Rarity, swaddled in her layers of clothes like a baby. She was still fast asleep. Applejack snorted in annoyance. Come on, Rarity, it's not like you to need any beauty sleep. She nudged the unicorn pony with a gentle hoof. Time to rise and shine. If you don't get up, we won't have any time to find those berries you were after. Rarity moaned a little. She still didn't wake up. Applejack frowned and came closer. Rarity's face was pale, and the area around her horn was covered in sweat.
Uh-oh.
You okay, Rarity? Applejack placed a hoof on the unicorn pony's forehead.
Fever.
She was burning up.
Uh-oh.
Bum, bum, bum!
What the f-
Applejack straight away started to peel the layers of water-stained clothes, pulling them off of Rarity with her teeth. It was just like unwrapping a mummy, but that image didn't seem at all funny to Applejack at the moment. She'd seen terrible things that could happen with a high fever. You know, this makes me think. Is it really such a good idea to keep yourself wrapped up in clothes like that when you just got out of a river, like you have all those blankets and everything? That would just keep all the crap from the river on you instead of it drying up.
Should dry off first.
You know what I'm saying? Like if she had not been in, I mean, I know she needs to be warm, but if she had not been in any blankets whatsoever, then maybe she wouldn't be sick right now.
Possibly. Possibly.
I don't know. She remembered her pappy, and those long last days confined to his bed at Sweet Apple Acres. He looked just like Rarity did now, pale and sweaty, and so weak. Her pappy had always been such a huge and robust stallion. Big Macintosh was a spitting image of how he'd looked in his younger days,
Oh, cool.
dragging his plow out in the fields in the broiling sun, the sweat of the heat and the labor beating on his flanks and withers. Applejack remembered how she used to skip behind him, planting the apple seeds from her little saddlebags.
Aw.
All the while, he'd pull the plow and look back at his daughter now with pride and love in his big dark eyes. And when he'd fallen ill, the weight and muscle had fallen away from his frame, and he'd become so thin and fragile that Applejack and Big Macintosh had to help him into bed, and he'd felt no heavier than the single bushel of apples. Don't worry, little sis, Big Macintosh had told her one afternoon as she sat crying on the porch of the homestead, as so often she had in those terrible days. Pappy will be fine. He just needs to get his strength back.
God damn it.
Yep. But Applejack had seen the tiny glimmer of doubt in her big brother's eyes, and she'd known at that moment that Pappy wasn't ever going to get better.
That reminds me
Rarity
of
was
my
unclothed now,
grandmother.
lying on her side, her chest rising slowly as she breathed shallowly and with difficulty. Applejack nuzzled
Sorry
her, but
about
she didn't
that.
respond. Tears welled up in the corner of Applejack's eyes, but she angrily shook them away. What you doing, you dumb rabbit? Crying like a filly that stubbed her hoof. She rifled through the sandalbags.
Ain't nothing wrong with crying.
Finally finding the water canister, she opened it and
My
put it next to
grandmother
Rarity's
and Mama,
mouth.
I
But the
cry
unicorn pony
sometimes.
didn't react. So she gently eased her head up and
I'm
let
gonna
some of the
shut up
water
now.
trickle down into her mouth. Rarity coughed, but after
Talking
a
about
little
my
while she
grandmother will
started
just make me
swallowing.
crying.
That's a good filly, said Applejack. Applejack? Rarity opened her eyes and looked at her friend. Her pupils were unfocused, and she seemed half asleep still. Applejack's here, Rarity, replied Applejack. She sighed in relief. Don't you worry. Applejack. Now don't you try and talk, Rarity. You got an awful high fever. You need to rest up. Else, she tipped the little remaining water in the canister into Rarity's mouth as she drank it.
Bless you.
Rarity coughed again. So thirsty, Applejack. Applejack nodded. Of course you are, she replied. You awful dehydrated. She stood up and went into the flap of the tent. Just you wait a short while. I'll be back soon. Just gotta go find some fresh water.
Alright, that's the end of part 1.
Yeah, but we're probably going to be a little bit busy for the rest of the night, so me and Tailsthehero will most likely, unless we get done with it a little bit sooner than expected, we'll make part 2 of our reaction to Swayback Mountain either later tonight or the next time we hang out.
I'm pretty sure we'll have it done by tonight.
Yeah, but either way, see every pony later. Goodbye, and we'll see you either next time or later, all our bronies and Pegasisters.